Garrard Conley, Boy Erased, a memoir of identity, faith, and family. Welcome to the heart-wrenching journey of Garrard Conley, a young man struggling to reconcile his faith, his family, and his sexual identity as it unfolds in Boy Erased, a memoir of identity, faith, and family. In this book summary, we will delve into Conley's harrowing experiences within a fundamentalist Christian organization, Love in Action, which sought to convert him from homosexuality through an intense 12-step program. By learning how this ex-gay movement operates, shedding light on the dark corners of their teachings, and sharing the damaging consequences of its coercive treatment, we hope to provide our readers with a thought-provoking and moving account of one man's search for his true self.
Erasing Identity, a Struggle. Garrard Conley, at just 19 years old, found himself attending Love in Action, a program aimed at curing his homosexuality by a fundamentalist Christian organization called Exodus International. The organization's 12-step program promoted the idea that homosexuality was sinful and could be erased by filling one's life with God instead. Conley's haunting experience with Love in Action would later impact his life for years to come. At a youthful age of 19, Garrard Conley had his identity put to the test, and he found himself in a 2-week-long ex-gay program led by Love in Action, part of the global Exodus International organization. This religious organization operated under the false belief that homosexuality was a sinful addiction that could be cured, much like alcoholism or drug use. Spearheaded by a 12-step program, this course compared homosexuality to heinous crimes such as pedophilia and bestiality. Such deception becomes evident when Garrard, researching Love in Action's website, discovered the false accusation that if not cured, homosexuals would go on to have sex with animals due to their lack of self-control. Exodus International's Love in Action program presented itself as a resemblance to Alcoholics Anonymous but catered explicitly towards those who were led to believe they needed to cure their homosexuality. Upon arriving at the program, Garrard was told that he was using his homosexuality to fill a void in his life, much like substance abuse to cope with emptiness, and that he should renounce his sexual orientation by surrendering and committing to God. Sadly, Garrard Conley's Love in Action experience was not an isolated incident. As a part of Exodus International, which had a far-reaching presence across the world, the organization endorsed the harmful concept that homosexuality could be suppressed or changed. With his self-identity severely questioned, Garrard would carry the weight of his time in the ex-gay movement for the next decade of his life, struggling to navigate his journey back to self-acceptance. Unearthing True Identity. In Love in Action, a program aimed at recovering homosexuals, participants were made to confront their identities by discarding any elements that could be considered a false image. Anything hindering the emergence of a heterosexual identity, such as clothing or excessive jewelry, was confiscated. Female participants had to adhere to traditional concepts of femininity. The program also denounced classical music, yoga, and astrology, labeling them unchristian or sinful. Participants were instructed to cast aside everything except their Bible and the program handbook. As Conley entered the Love in Action program, he faced the daunting task of re-evaluating his identity. Upon his arrival, he had to part with anything associated with his current identity, including clothes, jewelry, and books. Participants were informed that to recover from homosexuality, they must unveil their true heterosexual identity. Anything obstructing this process would be deemed a false image and taken away. False images ranged from provocative clothing or excessive jewelry to mannerisms such as speaking in a campy tone. To promote conventional portrayals of femininity, women in the program were mandated to shave their legs and armpits twice a week. In a surprising turn of events, program facilitators decided that Conley's notebook of short stories was also a false image. It could potentially divert him from embracing his genuine gender identity. They cited reasons such as his use of a female narrator and certain descriptions of nature, which they saw as overly feminine and indicative of moral frailty. Consequently, one of Conley's stories was ripped out, and his notebook was confiscated. The Love in Action program went beyond policing personal effects. it also deemed specific aspects of modern society as sinful or contrary to Christian beliefs. Classical composers like Bach and Beethoven were deemed unchristian, and any references to yoga, astrology, or Dungeons and Dragons were strictly forbidden. To fully commit to the program, participants like Conley had to abandon everything except their Bibles and the Love in Action handbook. Struggles in the Bible Belt. Many individuals enter treatment centers like Love in Action to escape the discrimination they face in their religious communities. These participants usually come from the Bible Belt, an area in the American South where church plays a crucial role in society. Due to intense prejudice, program participants are often forced to seek treatment after facing ultimatums from their families or communities. Tragically, this also leads to internalized homophobia that leaves some people to spend months or years in treatment and even distancing themselves from the dangerous, liberal influence of higher education. Entering a treatment center that aims to erase part of one's identity seems unthinkable for some. Yet, for participants at Love in Action, they often have no other options. These individuals predominantly hail from the Bible Belt, where faith is deeply entrenched in daily life. This region tends to breed more intense discriminations against LGBTQ+ individuals. Commonly, these program participants experience ultimatums from their families, leaving them with the impossible choice to either renounce their homosexuality or face being disowned, evicted, cast out of their church, or excommunicated from their profoundly religious Southern communities. Tragically, this discrimination is not only experienced within their families and communities but also perpetuated by the media. Love in Action's participants have often internalized the homophobia they've encountered, believing that being LGBTQ+ results in a tragic, disease-ridden existence. To escape this perceived fate, they commit to the treatment center, with some staying even for months or years. Such dedication may mean abandoning higher education, fearing exposure to liberal influences, and jeopardizing their future opportunities. The center's staff is often composed of former participants who choose to remain in this safe haven rather than risking re-immersion into an intolerant society. In exchange for working in the center, these individuals must agree to limited contact with the outside world and avoiding secular environments, embracing an insular existence that prevents them from fully experiencing the world. A more heartbreaking aspect is the presence of teenagers in these programs, held against their will as minors without alternatives. Their parents send them to the center in misguided attempts to help, further compounding their struggles. In sum, the Love in Action program demonstrates the devastating consequences of intolerance within the Bible Belt, as individuals feel compelled to accept discriminatory treatments to avoid being ostracized. To create a safer, more inclusive society, this harsh reality must be confronted head-on, with compassion and understanding. A dangerous path to cure homosexuality. Love in Action, a program claiming to cure homosexuality, attracted vulnerable individuals who often already experience traumatic events. Unfortunately, the program further amplified their traumas, even pushing some participants to breaking point. Garrard Conley, the author of Boy Erased, entered the program following the heartbreaking combination of being outed and raped. The program's leader, John Smid, was known for his extreme and harmful methods. Numerous former participants committed suicide after attending the Love in Action treatment center. Love in Action participants, such as Garrard Conley, typically came from a place of trauma, searching for a solution to their struggles with identity. With a background in fundamentalist Christianity and a Baptist preacher father, Conley had kept his sexuality a secret. Tragically, during Conley's first year of college, a supposed friend raped him and then cruelly outed him to his parents. At only 19 years old, Conley faced the dual traumas of sexual assault and rejection from his family. His distressed parents withdrew their support for his education unless he found a way to cure his homosexuality. Desperate for a solution, Conley chose Love in Action. Unfortunately, the program proved far from helpful in healing his shattered world. The Love in Action Center, led by John Smid, was no sanctuary for these vulnerable individuals. Instead, it was a place steeped in toxic beliefs and extreme measures. Eerily, it's estimated that up to 30 former participants committed suicide following their time in the program. Smid himself callously advised one participant to consider suicide over living as a gay man. One particularly disturbing account in the 1990s involved Smid conducting a mock funeral for a Love in Action participant considering leaving the program and accepting his homosexuality. Forcing the participant to lie down, Smid had others read pretend obituaries as the subject lay traumatized. This unsettling event left lasting scars on the victim. In conclusion, Love in Action proved to be a disastrous and damaging experience for many who sought healing, only to find themselves facing even greater traumas than before. Love in Action's Flawed Philosophy. Love in Action, a controversial program, claimed to have the answer to why some people are gay and others are straight. They believed that homosexuality was caused by childhood experiences and the devil's influence. Conley, a participant, was counseled by an unqualified former alcoholic named Danny Cosby, who believed that playing sports was a crucial factor in preventing homosexuality. The program also emphasized the need to admit and confront Satan's role in causing homosexuality. Participants were required to complete a nightly moral inventory, identifying moments of temptation and sinfulness and discussing them in group therapy. The Love in Action program claimed that playing sports in childhood could prevent homosexuality, arguing that healthy male bonding through sports would ward off homosexual tendencies. Danny Cosby, Conley's counselor with no legitimate qualifications, equated homosexuality to a heroin addiction, believing both could be treated. However, his background consisted only of alcoholism and attending AA meetings. Besides prescribing sports as a panacea, this problematic program sought to make participants aware of Satan's supposed influence on their sexuality. To reclaim a godly life, the program insisted that participants admit the devil's role in causing their homosexuality and thoroughly examine their alleged sinfulness. The program's primary tool was the moral inventory, a daily exercise in which participants reflected on instances of temptation by Satan, typically sexual misconduct. These detailed accounts were then shared in group therapy sessions the following day. The group provided feedback on the shamefulness of the individual's past actions, the extent to which they were manipulated by Satan, and guidance on leading a more virtuous life. In short, Love in Action's misguided philosophy relied on a combination of promoting childhood sports participation, equating homosexuality with addiction, and emphasizing the devil's supposed impact on sexual orientation. Through the moral inventory practice, participants were subjected to intense scrutiny and shame as they navigated a path to godliness in their lives. Overcoming the ex-gay movement. Conley's journey unveils the harsh realities faced within the Love in Action program, its eventual disbandment, and the lingering effects on survivors' lives. Despite apologies from ex-gay movement leaders like John Smid, the emotional trauma leaves lasting damage on those who experienced it. Conley grapples with trust, faith, and a fractured relationship with his family, reminding us that internal healing is a continuous process. Against his parents' wishes, Conley made a life-altering choice to end his association with the Love in Action program. After 2 intense weeks of attempting to crush his true identity, he realized his mental health was at stake and the program could have led him to suicide. Fortunately, not only has the Love in Action program disbanded, but its parent organization, Exodus International, has dissolved as well. Nonetheless, Conley still carries the emotional scars from his time in the ex-gay movement. Years after Conley's harrowing experience, John Smid, the program's leader, renounced the ex-gay movement and publicly admitted the program's inability to alter participants' sexual orientation. Much to everyone's relief, many former ex-gay therapists and counselors publicly apologized for their actions, and the number of ex-gay treatment facilities significantly dwindled by 2016. However, it's important to note that some American evangelical Christians have started exporting ex-gay ideologies to countries like Uganda. Though the ex-gay movement has lost its grip on the southern U.S., its survivors still grapple with its lingering effects. For Conley, forming lasting relationships and trusting others became a nearly insurmountable challenge for years after leaving the treatment center. Moreover, his faith in God crumbled as he struggled to reconcile belief in a higher power with the sinfulness he had been taught to associate with his identity. Even a decade after treatment, Conley's connection to God remains severed. Sadly, despite his mother's apology, Conley's relationship with his father remains distant and cold. As a result, he feels his relationship with his family will never truly recover. It's a stark reminder that healing from the ex-gay movement and its teachings is an ongoing, arduous journey.
As we reach the end of this touching memoir, it's essential to recognize and reflect on the core themes of the story. These include the struggle for identity, the role of family and faith, and the malign impact of organizations like Love in Action. With the ex-gay movement now largely disbanded, Garrard Conley's experiences serve as a stark reminder of the damaging consequences of such ideologies. Unfortunately, the effects of that time continue to affect not only Conley but also many others who have faced similar experiences. It's crucial to be aware of these narratives and maintain an open, empathetic approach towards individuals going through their journey of self-discovery and acceptance of their true identity.